When it comes to strength training and being an athlete, one of the most common concepts that I think a lot of people should understand starting off or just in general is you're not a power lifter. What I mean by this is, yes, we want to get stronger and move heavier weights over time, but the goal of strength training for most athletes is to be faster, quicker, more explosive, safer, agile, resilient, and a ton of other goals. If those are your goals you're striving for, then it's not about lifting heavy weight all the time. It's about strength training for performance, not for PRs. Strength training for the sake of being better at your sport, not the sake of lifting heavy weights or the risk of reducing performance due to not training appropriately or progressively over time. You see, strength training is very much like almost everything in life. The real improvements are efficiently achieved from consistency over time. That's where I wanted to start this video off. Not saying you can't lift heavy or focus on getting stronger, but there is a range, and it takes time to get good at lifting and improve strength. Lifting, like any other skill, shooting a basketball, throwing a baseball, kicking a soccer ball, or any skill, takes repetition and time to master. Take a simple squat, for example. Most training protocols, when starting off, will begin with a simple 3 sets of 10 repetitions. In total, that's 30 reps per workout, and an athlete will do that once a week. The less fortunate thing about learning the skill sets of lifting weights when it comes to most exercises is you have a minimal amount of reps you can do per week due to performance, which in reality allows less time to practice a particular lift compared to something like shooting a basketball, which you can do hundreds of reps per week with no problem. With weightlifting, you can't really do that unless you're just doing body weight reps, lighter reps, or probably doing too much. The issue with those, if you're never really trying to increase the weight or you're doing too much, then it's really hard to gain strength or you'll end up with an injury. Integrating a weightlifting movement is, like I said before, a skill, and as a skill, it takes time for your body to learn and to do that skill efficiently through repetition. This is where a sports performance program comes in to teach those skills, and for the rest of this video, we will go over those concepts that I referenced in the last strength video. If you've had to watch that video, I'd recommend to go there before this episode or this video or after this one. When lifting, the movement is broken down into concentric and eccentric parts. The eccentric part is when the muscle is lengthening. Think like a simple bicep curl. As I lower the weight, my bicep is stretching or lengthening. Then the concentric part of the lift is when I curl the dumbbell and the muscle is shortening. This applies to every single lift. A squat, when going down, is the eccentric portion. Then when coming up, it's the concentric. Dumbbell bench press, the down portion is eccentric and the up is concentric. Or like on a deadlift, the up portion is the concentric and the down portion is the eccentric. Why is this important to a beginner? It's because one of the best ways to work on hypertrophy or muscle growth, and even just starting off and learning a lift, is to slow things down. This is where over at the gym and a lot of training programs, there's a tempo focus or count on the eccentric portion of the movement. Over at the gym, in the first few weeks or so, athletes will start off with a 3 to 4 second eccentric portion of some of the lifts. Doing this will provide the athlete with more time under tension with the movement, or simply put, more time doing the movement. In general, this leads to more muscle breakdown, which over time will help with growth and strength. So a 3 to 4 second eccentric, like you see me doing here in the squat, and then a controlled concentric, making sure everything is smooth up and down without bouncing out of the bottom. One of my favorite cues to give an athlete on the eccentric portion of a lift, whether doing them slow or normal, is think about pulling the weight down with you versus just letting the weight push you down. Control the up and control the down. There's also kind of a third concept when it comes to lifting that is in the same wheelhouse of this conversation, and that is an isometric contraction. So instead of the motion having just a eccentric and concentric portion, which is also called an isotonic contraction, when the muscle is lengthening and shortening like we just talked about, an isometric contraction is when the muscle is held under load in a lengthened or shortened position. Without making this too confusing as it already might seem, let's look at some examples. Back to the goblet stop. With an isometric contraction at the gym, let's say we are doing a goblet squat with a 2 second isometric portion, or isometric contraction. That basically means at the bottom of the squat, you have to isometrically contract or hold for 2 seconds before coming up. That isometric contraction at the bottom of the squat, where you're holding in position under control with tension and your muscles are contracted, i.e. an isometric contraction. Or in a bench press, you could do this in 2 ways. Isometrically holding one dumbbell up while the other one goes through a rep, or pause 2 at the bottom. Either way, without getting too deep and confusing, an isometric contraction is when you're trying to maintain tension while holding in position with stability and balance. Simply put, holding a certain position for a length of time, but holding it with intent and control. When starting off in weightlifting or strength training, the first thing we work on in the gym is technique. Then once an athlete, depending on their age, really gets the movement down, it's time to add in weight. Then progressively over each week, looking to increase the amount of weight that is used, not only by going up in weight, but by adapting the rep ranges, by lowering them and or increasing/decreasing the number of sets. For the first few weeks or so, let's say starting off with 8 to 10 reps, but over time, progressively and slowly working down to 5 to 6 reps, but also up in weight. A very common question I get over at the gym is, when should I go up in weight for a lift, or what weight should I start off with? The easiest answer to this question is to never start off with a weight you haven't done before. So for example, let's say we're doing a split squats, and last week you did a goblet hold with a 15-pound weight at the heaviest. Real quick, this is a goblet hold here, where I have the dumbbell position at my chest. We use this very often, so it's important to note it quickly here, goblet hold. That means the following week, start at that weight, or a little bit lighter, like 10 to 12 pounds. Then progress back up to 15 pounds. And if the weight feels easy on the second or third set, and we have 4 sets, go up to a 20 and see how it feels. Then on the following week, start at a 15 again, see how that feels, and then progress back up to 20. Then over time, eventually you'll start with a 20 or 25. In some sets, if it starts to get too heavy on that day, you go down in weight, always making sure to get the reps in with proper technique. Also, the hold will change up sometimes on certain lifts, to say a suitcase hold like you see here, where one dumbbell is in each hand. Still though, if you've only done 20 pounds in total, then there should only be 10 pounds in each hand, because that's still 20 total pounds. Progression over time. Always start with the weight that you've done before, and technique should always trump the weight that is being used. Proper form on technique on a consistent basis, with progressively increasing weight and modifying the rep schemes, is the way to a stronger athlete. When it comes to weightlifting as well, sometimes you have to go by feel with the weight you're using. Some days you might feel stronger or better than others with a certain weight. Let's say an athlete had a tournament over the weekend or a game prior to the training day, and their legs are pretty sore. It's important, even for younger athletes, to again always start with the weight they've done before and to begin to get in tune with their body and how they feel. Sometimes the soreness isn't going to allow you to progress or safely lift heavier weights on a particular day or training session, and it's always better to sit on the side of caution. An athlete that can learn more about their body and how they feel is a stronger athlete at the end of the day. Knowing when to push themselves and when to go a little easier is a strong skill to learn over time. This relates back to the beginning of this video in the sense of, you're not a power lifter. Sometimes when listening to your body, it's not about the weight moved, but about getting the reps in and being consistent with training. Strength training done right is an amazing tool that will make all athletes perform better and even safer. In this series, there's one more video to watch, the conclusion, to really wrap everything up and to get you ready to train over at Edge or anywhere. I hope these videos have really helped you out and got you or your athlete ready or excited for training. See you in the conclusion video.